The air in the specialized home care facility hummed with a sterile, almost oppressive quiet, punctuated only by the soft, rhythmic beeps of medical equipment and the hushed, deferential voices of the night staff. It carried the faint, pervasive scent of antiseptic, a clinical aroma that mingled subtly with the warmer, more human smells of old linen, faint institutional cooking, and the occasional comforting waft of chamomile tea from the break room. This was the nocturnal world of Ethan Thorne, a man whose late 30s carried the quiet dignity of profound self-imposed dedication. Once a celebrated neuroprosthetics engineer, a name once whispered with awe and anticipation in the hallowed halls of cutting-edge research, he now moved through these hushed corridors as a diligent night nurse and caretaker, his life meticulously redefined by the unwavering rhythm of patient needs and the quiet, all-consuming imperative of his daughter's well-being. His scrubs, though impeccably clean, bore the subtle marks of ceaseless wear, faded at the knees, softened at the elbows. The fabric thinned from countless hours spent kneeling by bedsides, leaning over intricate rehabilitation equipment, or gently assisting patients through the long, quiet hours of the night. His large hands, once accustomed to the intricate precision of micro-soldering delicate neural components and tracing the labyrinthine pathways of complex neurodiagrams, were now adept at the more visceral yet equally critical tasks of adjusting IV drips with seamless efficiency, repositioning patients to prevent bed sores with a surprising tenderness, and offering a comforting, reassuring touch that often spoke more than words ever could. Financially, his existence was a constant low-level hum of anxiety. Every grocery trip was a tactical operation to stretch his meager salary. Every bill scrutinized, and the constant worry about his aging car, a sputtering, rust-eaten relic that seemed to hold its breath with every ignition turn, was a persistent, nagging thrum beneath the surface of his thoughts. His primary focus, his unwavering sun around which his entire existence orbited, was his 10-year-old daughter Lily. She was a vibrant, incandescent child, a splash of bright, unfiltered color in his often monochromatic, clinically precise world. Lily was his entire universe. The profound reason he rose each morning, or more accurately collapsed into bed each morning, after his arduous night shift, and the unshakable purpose that guided every single decision he made. Taped to the inside of his small, dented metal locker tucked away from the prying eyes of casual observers was a worn, creased drawing from Lily. It was a child's enthusiastic rendition of him as a superhero, a figure with a bright, flowing red cape, a purposeful wrench clutched in one hand, and a comically large, glowing heart emblazoned on his chest. It was a simple drawing rendered in vibrant crayons, but it was a powerful daily reminder of their deep, unbreakable bond and her innocent, unwavering belief in him. He glanced at it now, a soft, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips, a rare, fleeting moment of profound warmth in the cool, clinical quiet of the night. As he moved from room to room, his rounds methodical and thorough, checking vitals, administering medications, and ensuring every patient was as comfortable as possible, Ethan's innate empathy was evident in every quiet gesture. He smoothed a tangled sheet for Mrs. Albright, a stroke patient who could only communicate with her expressive, pleading eyes. Her silent gratitude a powerful affirmation. He adjusted Mr. Chen's ventilator with a delicate, almost intuitive touch, anticipating the subtle shifts in his breathing patterns. He was quiet, profoundly observant, and deeply compassionate qualities that set him apart from the hurried efficiency and sometimes detached professionalism of some of his colleagues. He saw beyond the illness, beyond the medical charts, to the fragile human spirit within. He paused by the bedside of a new patient, Mr. Harrison, a man in his late 70s with advanced Parkinson's disease. Mr. Harrison had been admitted just hours earlier, brought in by frantic family members, his entire body racked by violent tremors, agitated and profoundly disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings and the worsening severity of his condition. The day nurses, overwhelmed by the patient's distress and the complexity of his medical history, had struggled to calm him, resorting to increasing doses of sedatives. But the agitation persisted, a restless, almost agonizing energy, vibrating uncontrollably through his frail frame. He thrashed weakly against his restraints, his eyes wide with a deep existential fear. While other nurses meticulously recorded data, their faces drawn with fatigue and frustration, Ethan simply observed. He noted the subtle, almost rhythmic pattern in Mr. Harrison's tremors, not random chaotic movements, but a deeply ingrained undulation that seemed to ebb and flow with his shallow, rapid breaths, a distorted symphony of neural misfire. His gaze drifted to a standard rehabilitation device positioned near the bed, a seemingly simple mechanical arm designed to assist with passive limb movement. Ethan instinctively analyzed its mechanics, his mind already whirring, noting subtle inefficiencies in its limited range of motion, a slight, almost imperceptible jerkiness in its hydraulic system that would hinder true therapeutic benefit. For a fleeting moment, he mentally re-engineered its components, optimizing its response curve, envisioning a fluid, seamless motion. It was a flicker of his past genius, an unbidden spark of the brilliant mind he had deliberately suppressed, blooming momentarily in the sterile air. A faded, intricately detailed tattoo of a stylized neural network design on his inner wrist, partially hidden by his worn scrub sleeve, seemed to almost hum beneath his skin as he thought, a quiet, almost forgotten emblem of his former life, a stark reminder of a past he had deliberately abandoned after a traumatic professional incident. He absently traced the lines of the tattoo with his thumb, his mind instinctively seeking complex patterns that others missed, connecting the visible tremors to an unseen, distorted neural pathway. Other nurses tried again to administer more medication, their voices firm but strained, bordering on exasperation. "Mr. Harrison, please, you need to lie still. We're trying to help you. The medication will calm you down." But the agitation only seemed to worsen, spiraling into a more frantic, desperate struggle, a silent, guttural plea for understanding and release emanating from the elderly man's terror-stricken eyes. The conventional approach was failing. Ethan stepped forward, his movements calm, deliberate, and unhurried, a stark contrast to the growing tension in the room. Instead of force or further potentially dangerous medication, he quietly approached the agitated patient's bedside. "Mr. Harrison," he murmured, his voice soft, a low, comforting baritone that seemed to cut through the man's profound disorientation, reaching something deeper, more primal. He gently, tentatively took the patient's trembling, thrashing hand in his own, his grip firm but gentle. With a surprisingly light, rhythmic touch, he began to gently massage Mr. Harrison's wrist, just above the pulse point, his fingers tracing small circular patterns. It wasn't a conventional massage. It was a forgotten, almost therapeutic technique he had once researched meticulously for calming overactive neural pathways during his pioneering days in brain-computer interfaces, a technique based on subtle pressure points designed to modulate erratic sensory input. As he massaged, his voice deepened slightly, and he began to hum a soft old lullaby that Lily loved, its gentle, repetitive melody, a soothing counterpoint to the sharp, insistent beeps of the monitors. Within minutes, an astonishing transformation occurred. Mr. Harrison's rigid body visibly relaxed. The frantic tremors that had seemed so utterly uncontrollable began to subside, softening into gentle ripples, then finally smoothing into stillness. His agitated, gasping breathing deepened, becoming slower, more profound, until it settled into the even, peaceful rhythm of true sleep. The frantic urgency in his eyes faded, replaced by a profound, almost childlike serenity. A sigh, deep and content, escaped his lips. This small, selfless act of profound empathy and intuitive skill immediately established Ethan's inherent goodness and unique abilities in a way that no resume or impressive title ever could. It wasn't just a nurse's duty competently performed. It was the quiet, almost miraculous intervention of a mind that understood the delicate intricacies of the human body, not just as a collection of mechanical systems, but as a complex, vulnerable symphony of interconnected impulses. It secured an unwavering empathy from any observer, even his initially skeptical colleagues who watched in stunned, respectful silence. Ethan didn't seek recognition. He merely returned to his duties, leaving Mr. Harrison in a peaceful, drug-free sleep, the soft lullaby still echoing faintly, almost imperceptibly, in the hushed room. He moved with the quiet grace of a man content in his chosen anonymity, utterly unaware that the quiet, predictable rhythm of his life was about to be irrevocably shattered by an earthquake of public desperation and a plea that would drag his hidden, unparalleled genius back into the blinding light of the world stage. The fragile peace he had built a sanctuary for himself and Lily was about to face its ultimate test. Miles away from the hushed, antiseptic corridors of Ethan's care facility, the polished, unforgiving world of corporate innovation and high-stakes technology was about to crack wide open, revealing the brutal fragility beneath its gleaming surface. The setting was a cavernous state-of-the-art exhibition hall in Geneva, Switzerland, bathed in the blinding glare of 1,000 television lights and the relentless flash of professional cameras. On a raised futuristic platform, fabricated from brushed steel and reinforced glass, stood Sophia Hayes, the brilliant, athletic, and fiercely independent 24-year-old daughter of Richard Hayes, the formidable CEO of Hayes Robotics. This was to be her moment of triumph, a living embodiment of the company's boundless potential. She was a vision of vibrant, youthful potential, her lithe, athletic physique encased in a gleaming, almost predatory, experimental athletic exoskeleton. The pinnacle of Hayes Robotics' groundbreaking innovation, their crowning jewel. Her father, Richard Hayes, a man whose public persona was an impenetrable mask of steely composure and unwavering confidence, watched from the front row, his face a rare, almost imperceptible mask of profound, unshakable pride. Sophia, a former Olympic hopeful in track and field, whose promising career had been cruelly cut short by a nagging career-ending minor injury, had found a new profound purpose, championing assistive technology and advocating for human augmentation. This high-profile televised demonstration was to be her triumphant return to the global stage, a powerful testament to human resilience, the indomitable spirit, and the transformative power of technological advancement. The exoskeleton itself, named Ares, after the Greek god of war, was a marvel of biomechanical engineering, a fusion of carbon fiber, advanced hydraulics, and cutting-edge AI. It promised to amplify human strength and speed to superhuman levels, hinting at a dazzling future where physical limitations were merely inconvenient suggestions, easily overcome by the symbiotic fusion of man and machine. The enormous crowd, a meticulously curated mix of influential investors, ravenous global media, and skeptical medical professionals, buzzed with an almost palpable anticipation, their murmurs a low, excited drone. Today, Sophia's voice, clear, confident, and resonant, echoed through the vast hall, amplified by an array of hidden speakers. We push the boundaries of human potential. We transcend limitations. We redefine what it means to move. With a confident flourish, she activated the exoskeleton, its metallic joints whirring softly, almost imperceptibly, as it came to life around her. She began to move, first a fluid, powerful stride that covered the length of the platform in mere seconds, then a controlled, gravity-defying leap that brought gasps from the audience. The crowd erupted into a spontaneous, roaring wave of applause, a deafening testament to their awe. Then it happened. Not with a bang, but with a terrifying, insidious whisper. A subtle flicker in the exoskeleton's myriad internal sensors. A faint, almost imperceptible, high-pitched whine from its complex hydraulic joints, a discordant note in the symphony of its perfect operation. Suddenly, chillingly, Sophia's movements became erratic, jerky, no longer responding to her conscious commands. The amplification, meant to be precise and controlled, twisted into something monstrous. Her left leg twitched violently, not in response to her command, but with a terrifying, uncontrolled force, an electrical surge gone rogue. She stumbled, tried desperately to regain her balance, but the exoskeleton, instead of supporting her, seemed to fight against her, amplifying her own desperate corrective movements into a destructive, agonizing dance. It was a terrifying, violent mimicry, a betrayal of its very purpose. She fell, but it wasn't a simple tumble, a graceful slip. The exoskeleton, now a cage of malfunctioning, hyper-responsive steel, amplified her descent, turning a simple fall into a catastrophic, uncontrolled plunge from the raised platform. The sickening, guttural sound of crunching metal and horrifyingly crunching bone echoed with terrifying clarity through the suddenly silent, paralyzed hall. Sophia lay motionless on the gleaming floor below the Ares exoskeleton, a twisted, inert shell around her, its polished surfaces reflecting the horrified faces of the crowd. Her body was utterly still, a stark, broken contrast to the vibrant energy she had exuded just moments before. The result was immediate, catastrophic, and deeply, irrevocably devastating. Sophia suffered a severe, highly complex spinal cord injury at the T12L1 vertebrae, leaving her completely and irrevocably paralyzed from the waist down. The fall had also caused a series of insidious microfractures in her cervical spine and severe diffuse nerve damage throughout her lower extremities, injuries so complex and unique that they defied conventional diagnosis and treatment with current medical technology. Her case was particularly challenging, seemingly irreversible, a medical enigma that baffled even the most seasoned specialists. The incident became a global scandal, dominating news cycles, shattering Hayes Robotics' once impenetrable reputation for infallibility, and sending its stock plummeting into freefall, a corporate crisis of unprecedented scale. The miracle exoskeleton, once a symbol of boundless technological advancement, was now a chilling symbol of corporate hubris, catastrophic failure, and human vulnerability. Richard Hayes, a man whose composure was legendary in the cutthroat world of international business, a ruthless businessman who lived by the unwavering belief in his company's superior technology and his own infallible judgment, was utterly, profoundly devastated. The fall of his brilliant prodigal daughter was a far greater blow than any stock market crash, any corporate takeover attempt. It was a wound that cut to the very core of his being, a personal catastrophe that dwarfed any professional setback. He poured limitless, inexhaustible resources into Sophia's recovery, sparing no expense. He flew in the world's top neurosurgeons from prestigious institutions in Boston, London, and Tokyo, renowned rehabilitation specialists from cutting-edge clinics in Germany, and brilliant if baffled engineers from the furthest reaches of his own global empire. Private jets ferried these experts from every corner of the globe to Sophia's meticulously outfitted, highly secure bedside at the elite Hayes Medical Center in New York. But all efforts, all consultations, all experimental treatments failed. Sophia remained agonizingly paralyzed, confined to a state-of-the-art medical bed. Her once vibrant spirit crushed her eyes, hollowed by a despair so profound it seemed to eclipse the very light in the room. The athlete, the advocate, the brilliant mind was trapped a prisoner within an unresponsive, betrayed body. In a moment of sheer public desperation, witnessing his daughter's light dimming with each passing day, watching her vibrant spirit wither, and feeling his vast empire teetering on the brink of irreparable ruin, Richard Hayes called an unprecedented, highly publicized press conference. His face was gaunt, deeply etched with lines of exhaustion and grief, his eyes bloodshot and haunted, a stark, shocking contrast to his usual steely resolve and unshakable confidence. The usual corporate jargon and carefully crafted PR statements were utterly absent. His voice, usually a booming, authoritative baritone that commanded respect in any boardroom, cracked with raw, unvarnished emotion as he issued an unprecedented plea to the world, a desperate, almost primal cry for salvation. "My daughter, Sophia, she deserves a chance," he stated, his voice trembling, betraying the immense control he usually exerted. "We have exhausted every known medical and technological solution. Every expert has weighed in. But I believe, I must believe, there is still a path forward. There has to be." He then offered an astronomical, truly unheard of sum. Anything, everything, whatever it takes. For anyone, anywhere, who possessed the unique knowledge, the insight, the genius to cure his daughter, to give her back her mobility, her life, her very future. He then revealed for the first time publicly a cutting-edge experimental neuro-interface prototype, a device developed by Hayes Robotics' secretive R&D division that had the theoretical potential to allow thoughts to bypass damaged neural pathways and control external devices. "This device," he said, holding up a sleek, almost ethereal piece of technology that pulsed with a faint internal light, "could be the key. It's a quantum leap in neurocontrol. But no one, not even our own most brilliant minds, no one has been able to make it work safely or effectively on a living paralyzed patient. It is too complex, too unpredictable, too prone to catastrophic feedback loops." His eyes, usually cold and calculating, were now hollow, desperate, pleading. "We need a miracle." He concluded the words, a raw, shattering admission of his own defeat, and a fervent, desperate prayer for hope. "My daughter needs a miracle. Hayes Robotics needs a miracle." The plea, broadcast globally, hung in the air, a testament to a father's broken heart and a CEO's crumbling empire. Ethan Thorne watched the press conference unfold, a solitary figure in the dimly lit break room of his care facility. He was on his short, precious break, nursing a lukewarm cup of instant coffee, the flickering television screen casting an eerie blue-white glow on his tired, thoughtful face. He saw Sophia Hayes, once a symbol of limitless human potential, now lying broken and despairing, her once vibrant eyes hollowed by an unspeakable sorrow that resonated deep within him. He recognized with a chilling clarity that no one else seemed to grasp the complex, almost paradoxical nature of her injury, the subtle nuances of neural damage and feedback corruption that standard diagnostics would inevitably miss. And more importantly, with a jolt that sent an electric shiver through him, he recognized the experimental neuro-interface prototype. A flicker of profound recognition, almost painful in its intensity, passed through him. A device he himself had conceptualized years ago, a theoretical framework for bypassing damaged neural pathways that he had developed in painstaking detail before his abrupt, self-imposed retreat from the cutting-edge world of neuroprosthetics. It was a project, a dream abandoned, due to his own profound past trauma and crippling self-doubt. The memory of his past failure resurfaced with agonizing clarity, sharp and precise like a surgeon's scalpel. A miscalculation in an early high-stakes neuroprosthetic design, a subtle, almost undetectable software bug in the feedback loop of a prototype neural implant. It had led to unforeseen debilitating side effects for a patient, causing them to experience phantom pain and severe cognitive dissonance and unquantifiable suffering that haunted his waking hours and his dreams. Though he had been rigorously cleared of direct fault by a subsequent internal investigation, the ensuing self-blame, the intense public scrutiny, the relentless media storm, and the crushing weight of knowing he had inadvertently caused suffering had led to a profound, paralyzing burnout. He had instinctively retreated from the blinding glare of the cutting-edge field, seeking the quiet anonymity and the predictable rhythm of a life defined by direct, tangible, and unburdened care. The very thought of returning to that world of colossal pressure, of terrifying uncertainty, and the potential for devastating, irreversible failure, of risking Lily's secure, stable, innocent life made his stomach clench with an icy dread. He felt the visceral, overwhelming urge to remain hidden, to stay anonymous in his quiet life, to keep his genius buried deep within him, away from the blinding glare of public expectation and the terrifying possibility of causing further harm. But Richard Hayes's desperate plea, raw and stripped of all corporate pretense, resonated deeply within him, bypassing his defenses. And Sophia's crushing despair, visible even through the cold, impersonal lens of the camera, struck a chord in his empathetic heart that vibrated with a profound, almost spiritual connection. He saw the utter hopelessness in her eyes, the crushing weight of her paralysis, the slow death of her spirit. He knew with a terrifying absolute certainty that transcended logic and fear that his unique blend of neurological understanding and engineering genius might be the only chance she had. He remembered his discarded blueprints, the complex revolutionary algorithms he had once scribbled in countless notebooks, the theoretical solutions he had only dreamed of implementing, solutions that addressed precisely the kind of feedback loop malfunction that had broken Sophia. He hesitated, torn agonizingly between the anonymity he had painstakingly built, the fragile peace he had carefully cultivated for Lily, and the overwhelming, undeniable need to act, to apply the very gift he had spent years trying to suppress. He looked at Lily's drawing, the small superhero with the big glowing heart taped to his locker door. He thought of her trusting eyes, her unshakable faith in him, her innocent belief in his goodness. He knew that if he revealed himself, if he stepped back into that arena, his quiet, hidden life would be irrevocably overshadowed by the very public spectacle of a CEO's desperation and the unyielding demands of a miraculous recovery. But the thought of not trying, of letting fear and past failures win when he might possess the answer to Sophia's suffering, was unbearable. It would be a betrayal of the very core of who he was, of the very reason Lily saw him as a hero. It would be a failure not of intellect but of character. He took a deep, ragged breath, a silent, profound commitment settling like a heavy stone in his soul. The weight of his past, the unbearable burden of his guilt, momentarily lifted, replaced by a singular burning purpose that eclipsed all fear. He knew the risks. He knew the pressure would be immense, almost crippling. But he also knew with a certainty that transcended logic and fear that he had to try. He walked out of the dimly lit break room, found the charge nurse, and quietly, decisively requested a meeting with Richard Hayes. The predictable, quiet rhythm of his life was about to be profoundly, irrevocably broken, replaced by the chaotic, deafening symphony of a desperate public plea and the daunting, almost impossible challenge of performing a miracle. His journey from the shadows of self-imposed exile to the harsh glare of an impossible task had just begun. The atmosphere in the highly secure intensive care unit ICU of the elite Hayes Medical Center was a study in jarring contrasts. Gleaming chrome and hushed, almost reverent professionalism, mingled with the raw, palpable despair of a family watching their world crumble, a stark testament to the limits of even the most advanced medicine. Ethan Thorne, dressed in his familiar faded yet meticulously clean scrubs, seemed utterly out of place amidst the crisp white lab coats of the attending physicians and the impeccably tailored designer suits of Richard Hayes's corporate entourage. He walked with the unassuming, almost quiet confidence of a man who truly belonged not to the world of cutthroat corporate power or academic prestige, but to the intimate, fragile space of human suffering. His journey from a desperate phone call to this sterile, tightly controlled environment had been surprisingly swift, fueled by an unexpected, almost serendipitous connection. A sympathetic contact within Hayes Robotics, an old junior colleague of Ethan's from his brief, brilliant foray into advanced neuroengineering, a loyal individual who had instantly recognized the spark of genius in Ethan's initial groundbreaking yet ultimately abandoned prototypes, had pulled strings, leveraged favors, and navigated the labyrinthine corporate bureaucracy to secure this improbable, almost unheard-of audience with Richard Hayes himself. Richard initially had been openly, even contemptuously dismissive. He was a man accustomed to dealing with polished academics, world-renowned specialists, and corporate titans, not quiet, unheralded men in worn uniforms seeking an audience at his daughter's bedside. "Mr. Thorne, I appreciate you responding to my public call." Richard began, his voice tight with barely concealed irritation and a weary condescension. His eyes, usually sharp and discerning, now held a glazed, desperate look, as if he were trying to find a needle in a haystack and only seeing dust. "But with all due respect, my daughter's case is being handled by the finest minds in the world, literally. What could a caretaker, a night nurse, possibly offer here that a dozen Nobel laureates couldn't?" His tone implied that Ethan was either delusional or a desperate opportunist. Before Ethan could respond, a sharp, authoritative voice, honed by years of commanding operating theaters and hospital boardrooms, cut in with chilling precision. "He offers nothing but an embarrassing distraction, Richard." Dr. Eleanor Vance, the notoriously brilliant yet rigidly conventional leading neurosurgeon on Sophia's case, swept into the room. Her pristine white coat, starched and unblemished, seemed to amplify her stern demeanor, radiating an aura of unchallengeable authority and absolute professional certainty. She was Ethan's estranged older sister, a fact few outside their immediate family knew. She had always harbored a deep-seated resentment for Ethan, believing he had not only squandered his unparalleled talent, but had also abandoned his promising career in neuroengineering, and in her eyes, selfishly betrayed their shared family legacy in medicine. She saw him not as a potential savior, but as a charlatan, an amateur, an embarrassment, and a painful living reminder of his past failures and his baffling retreat from a field where she had diligently, ruthlessly climbed to the absolute pinnacle. "Ethan," she said, her voice laced with thinly veiled contempt, barely concealing a sneer, "I presume you're here as a visitor. Sophia's condition is critical, the environment sterile, and we're following strict life-saving protocols. You have no place here." She shot Richard a pointed, almost accusatory look, a silent warning against indulging her brother's unconventional and, to her, deeply unprofessional presence. Ethan didn't flinch. He didn't boast. He didn't engage with their dismissive tones or their preconceived notions. His gaze, clear and intensely focused, was already fixed on Sophia, who lay motionless in the specialized ICU bed, her fragile body dwarfed by the complex machinery surrounding her. Her eyes, though open, held a chilling emptiness, a profound, almost catatonic despair that spoke of a spirit trapped, extinguished. Ethan's eyes darted across her complex, multi-layered medical charts displayed on a series of holographic interfaces, absorbing and processing data with astonishing speed. He listened intently to the subtle rhythms of her shallow, strained breathing, the faint, irregular patterns on her neural activity monitors sensing her deep, almost palpable despair, a silent language only he seemed to comprehend. "The problem isn't just physical," Ethan stated calmly, his voice a quiet yet undeniably authoritative counterpoint to Eleanor's sharp disapproval and Richard's barely contained impatience. He moved closer to Sophia's bedside, his presence surprisingly commanding despite his unassuming appearance, as if he had stepped onto a stage where only he knew the play. "It's a phantom neural block. Her mind is still sending signals to her lower body, strong, clear signals, but the feedback loop has been corrupted." He gestured to a complex diagram flickering on a nearby monitor, highlighting the chaotic, distorted neural activity that had baffled every other specialist. The exoskeleton's malfunction didn't just cause a spinal injury. It inadvertently created a constant erroneous negative signal, a ghost signal that amplified her normal muscle responses into paradoxical self-defeating contractions. Her brain, in a desperate, albeit misguided attempt to protect itself from this constant overwhelming pain and resistance, had essentially severed the connection, creating a neural firewall that, while protective, had locked her into a state of immobility, a neurological prison of her own making. It's not the injury that's paralyzing her, he concluded, looking directly at Eleanor, his gaze steady and unwavering. It's the brain's own misinterpretation of corrupted sensory input, a learned helplessness at a neurological level. He explained with chilling precision how the exoskeleton's amplification system, designed for enhancement and power, had inadvertently created a vicious cycle. Each attempt Sophia made to move sent a normal signal, which was then hyper-amplified by the malfunctioning exoskeleton as a debilitating counterforce, essentially telling her brain that movement was futile and agonizing. Her brain, seeking to restore balance, had then built up this neurological firewall, preventing any signals from reaching her lower body. This was a critical design flaw, a subtle, deeply embedded vulnerability that no conventional neurosurgeon focused on anatomical damage, or even a typical engineer focused on mechanical and physical integrity, would readily find. It was a problem of communication, of corrupted neurological language, not just physical causation. His explanation was not just a diagnosis, it was a profound intuitive understanding of the complex interplay between the human mind and advanced machinery, a level of insight that no one else in that room possessed. Richard Hayes, despite his initial contempt and ingrained skepticism, was utterly forced to listen. The sheer precision of Ethan's diagnosis, the immediate and startlingly accurate assessment of a problem that had stumped his most senior specialists from around the globe, forced a chilling realization upon him. He watched transfixed as Ethan, with quiet, undeniable confidence, began to dissect the intricate neural block. He saw not just a nurse, but the rapid understanding, the profound depth of knowledge that transcended mere medical or engineering skill. This wasn't memorized protocol or textbook knowledge. It was intuitive genius, a visceral, almost symbiotic grasp of the subtle interplay between the human mind and advanced robotic systems. His internal monologue, initially dismissive and arrogant, shifted slowly at first, then rapidly, from irritation to a dawning, terrifying clarity. This man isn't just a nurse, he's a potential savior, but also, and perhaps more critically, a very dangerous witness. A cold, calculating dread began to settle like a block of ice in Richard's stomach. If Ethan was right, if this paralysis stemmed not from an unforeseeable accident, but from a fundamental design flaw in his company's flagship product, the Ares exoskeleton, it would not only be a devastating public admission of corporate negligence, but also irrefutable proof of a fundamental, almost unforgivable oversight in their celebrated, supposedly infallible technology. If this truth got out, if the world knew that his prized exoskeleton designed for human enhancement had been the very instrument that caused his daughter's paralysis, it would shatter the very foundation of his vast empire. Hayes Robotics, built on a reputation of pioneering innovation and unwavering reliability, would crumble into dust. His thoughts immediately turned with a practiced ruthlessness to damage control. How to keep this quiet, how to spin this narrative, how to make sure this unlicensed nurse doesn't expose the underlying design flaw that could ruin my entire empire, my legacy. Without a single overt word, Richard subtly signaled to his head of corporate security, a burly, taciturn man named Marcus, who was always present, hovering discreetly outside the ICU door. His presence a silent sentinel of power. "Monitor Mr. Thorne's every move," Richard murmured under his breath, his eyes never leaving Ethan, who was now calmly examining Sophia's unresponsive leg. "He is not to communicate with anyone outside this immediate team without my express permission. And there will be no heroic narratives. This is an internal, strictly medical matter, understand." He then began to subtly manipulate the communication with the horde of media still waiting like vultures outside the hospital gates. He selectively relayed information, carefully crafting a narrative that downplayed the severity of the exoskeleton's design flaw, framing Sophia's condition as a unique, unforeseeable medical anomaly, a tragic consequence of an experimental procedure, and preparing a narrative that would highlight the miraculous intervention of an exceptional medical professional, without, of course, giving specific credit or revealing any details that could irrevocably compromise his company. He was already planning how to control the perception, how to control the story, how to control Ethan Thorne. Dr. Eleanor Vance observing the desperate, almost desperate hope flickering in Richard's eyes, as Ethan proposed a risky, unconventional solution, a complete neural system reset, using a modified experimental neurointerface, and a precise custom-built biofeedback system, reacted with cold, furious contempt. Her face flushed, her jaw clenched, her eyes blazing with a mixture of professional outrage and deep-seated personal resentment. She viewed Ethan's methods as utterly reckless, dangerously unscientific, and a direct affront to every principle she had meticulously upheld throughout her distinguished career. It was a direct threat to her professional standing, to her carefully constructed reputation as the leading authority on spinal cord injuries, and to her years of meticulously adhering to established medical protocols. "This is madness," Ethan Eleanor hissed, stepping forward, her voice a low, furious whisper barely audible above the hum of the machines. "A neural reset, using an experimental device that has never been successfully implemented on a living patient, let alone one with such complex injuries. This is beyond reckless. This is dangerous. You're putting Sophia's life at greater, unforgivable risk." She then, with chilling precision, reminded Richard of Ethan's past failures, hinting darkly at the traumatic incident that caused him to abandon his engineering career, spinning it into a narrative of instability, unreliability, and even irresponsibility. He walked away from his own projects, Richard. He couldn't handle the pressure then, and he certainly can't now. His brilliance is a liability, not a cure. Her words were carefully chosen, designed to undermine, to discredit. Eleanor then began her insidious sabotage. While Ethan, ignoring her, continued to analyze Sophia's charts and discuss the intricate multi-layered procedure with a few initially skeptical but now increasingly intrigued junior residents, Eleanor subtly misplaced crucial diagnostic reports claiming they were accidentally filed or corrupted in the system. She intentionally scheduled conflicting, utterly unnecessary medical tests for Sophia, forcing frustrating delays in Ethan's planned intervention. She planted concerns about Ethan's methods with other more conservative medical staff, whispering doubts about his credentials, his lack of current medical licensing, and his unconventional, unproven approach, attempting to delay or undermine him without directly causing harm to Sophia, at least not in a way that could be directly traced back to her. Her deep-seated resentment, her professional pride as the leading expert on Sophia's case, and her desperate need to prove her own conventional methods superior, fueled her desire to see her brother fail, to prevent him from once again overshadowing her carefully built career and solidifying his reckless genius. The sterile ICU, already a place of profound tension of life and death hanging in the balance, had just become a treacherous, unseen battleground, not just for Sophia's life, but for the very soul of Ethan Thorne's hidden genius, a struggle for truth and redemption against the dark forces of envy and corporate control. The sterile, high-tech intensive care unit ICU room, usually a sanctuary of controlled medical procedures and hushed clinical efficiency, had transformed into the ultimate arena for Ethan's ultimate test. The air thick with anticipation, and the metallic tang of fear crackled with an almost unbearable tension. Sophia Hayes lay on the specialized medical bed, a delicate, fragile figure hooked to a myriad of wire sensors and monitors. Her expression, a fragile mix of lingering, almost desperate hope and profound, soul-crushing despair. The experimental neurointerface prototype, a device of almost ethereal delicacy, crafted from gleaming silver alloys and intricate microfilaments, was carefully positioned over her head, its advanced sensors poised to commune with the very essence of her damaged brain. Outside, beyond the reinforced soundproof glass partition that separated the treatment area from the observation gallery, a throng of anxious medical professionals, high-ranking company executives from Hayes Robotics and Richard Hayes himself, watched, their faces a complex mosaic of skepticism, desperate hope, and simmering, ruthless judgment. The impending failure, or the dawning miracle, was no longer an abstract possibility, discussed in hushed tones. It was a terrifying, tangible reality unfolding with excruciating slowness and brutal precision before their very eyes. Every second stretched into an eternity. Ethan moved with a focused intensity, his every gesture deliberate, precise, his voice a calm, steady counterpoint to the subtle rising hum of the machines, and the frantic beeping of vital monitors carried an unshakable authority, We're going to initiate the neural reset. He instructed a small team of assisting residents and highly trained technicians, their faces pale with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Synchronize the biofeedback loop with the neural stimulant drip. Precision is paramount. We have a narrow critical window for this to work and no margin for error. The residents, initially skeptical of this nurse, who commanded more advanced knowledge than most neurosurgeons, now followed his commands with a grim, almost reverent determination, their faces etched with a dawning awe for his unconventional, undeniable genius. Yet despite their compliance, despite their growing respect, Ethan was profoundly isolated. They followed his instructions, but their understanding of the intricate, multi-layered system he was manipulating was limited, their trust in his unorthodox methods still fragile. They saw him as a desperate last-ditch gamble, a Hail Mary pass, in the face of insurmountable odds, not an infallible expert. Richard Hayes's watchful presence added another immense layer of pressure, a silent, oppressive weight that seemed to press down on Ethan from beyond the glass. Though he had given Ethan permission to proceed, his gaze was a constant, unsettling reminder of the colossal stakes involved. Failure here would not only mean the tragic, irreversible loss of his beloved daughter's potential and her future, but also the final irreparable collapse of his corporate empire, built on a foundation of technological supremacy that was now cracking under the weight of Sophia's tragedy. His presence was a silent threat to Ethan's anonymity, to his carefully constructed, quiet life, and potentially to his very freedom, should he fail to deliver the promised miracle and expose the flaws in Hayes Robotics' prized exoskeleton. Richard's mind whirred already, calculating the angles, planning the inevitable damage control, the narrative spin, should this audacious gamble fail. He intended to control this story no matter the outcome. But the most insidious pressure, the most corrosive element in this already volatile atmosphere, emanated from within the room itself. Dr. Eleanor Vance, Ethan's estranged sister, moved with a deceptive calm, ostensibly assisting with the preparation of instruments. But her true intent was a venomous, almost tangible undercurrent in the already strained atmosphere. She had positioned herself near the primary control console for the experimental neurointerface, her movements subtly designed to impede, to derail, to undermine. Eleanor's internal monologue seethed with a deep-seated, bitter resentment. He always plays the martyr, the unconventional genius swooping in with his reckless brilliance. He abandoned us, abandoned his calling, left me to shoulder the family legacy alone. And now he walks back in, expecting to claim the glory, to be the hero. Not while I'm here. Not again. Her pride, her years of meticulous conventional effort, her carefully built reputation felt threatened by his audacious presence, by the sheer unbridled force of his intuitive genius. Eleanor began her insidious sabotage, a ballet of subtle obstruction. As Ethan, his eyes fixed on the flickering neural readouts, calmly called for specific neuromodulator settings, crucial for the delicate reset, she would misplace the data chip, claiming a system error or a file corruption. "Apologies, Ethan," she'd murmur, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "It seems the system glitched again. The settings you requested are proving rather difficult to locate. Perhaps a manual input, if you can recall them all precisely." She would delay relaying critical, real-time neural feedback data from the secondary monitors, claiming intermittent sensor malfunctions, forcing Ethan to rely on less precise visual cues and his own internal calculations, wasting precious seconds. Her most potent weapon, however, was her voice, a low, taunting murmur, barely audible above the hum of the machines, and Sophia's shallow, labored breathing designed to penetrate Ethan's concentration. "Still playing God, Ethan. Remember what happened last time you tried to rewrite the rules. A patient paid the price and you ran. You always run when things get tough, don't you?" She would dredge up his past failures, exaggerating details, twisting his trauma into a narrative of supposed cowardice in abandoning his promising career, his perceived neglect of their family, in his obsessive pursuit of his impossible engineering dreams. Lily deserves a stable life, Ethan a father who isn't risking everything on a reckless gamble. "Don't you think of her when you take these ridiculous chances?" She'd whisper, hitting him where it hurt the most, aiming directly for the raw, still-healing wound of his self-doubt and guilt. These were not just distractions. They were meticulously placed psychological attacks designed with surgical precision to erode Ethan's focus, to trigger the profound guilt and self-doubt that had driven him from the industry years ago. Ethan had to navigate not only the immediate life-or-death crisis of Sophia's precarious condition, but also his sister's insidious calculated sabotage and the crushing, suffocating weight of his own past guilt, all while battling the relentless ticking clock. The rhythmic, insistent beep of Sophia's vital signs monitor, combined with the soft, almost hypnotic hum of the experimental neurointerface, became a tangible, brutal representation of their dwindling time. Ethan had explained the critical window for the neural reset with chilling clarity, a few hours maximum, before Sophia's brain fully adapted to the phantom block, and the paralysis became utterly irreversible, permanently rewiring her neural pathways around the corrupted feedback loop. Every single minute lost to technical difficulties, human error, or Eleanor's deliberate subtle interference amplified the tension to a near breaking point, pushing the limits of Ethan's endurance. Sophia's own fragile body, already worn by prolonged immobility, and the trauma of her injury began to show alarming signs of strain. Her heart rate fluctuated, dangerously spiking, then plummeting, her breathing becoming shallow and erratic, teetering on the edge of respiratory distress. And then the glitch he had suspected from his darkest hours of past work, the one that had haunted his dreams and fueled his retreat from cutting-edge research, became a terrifying, undeniable reality. It was an intermittent, almost undetectable desynchronization in the neurointerface's biofeedback algorithm, a subtle, deeply insidious bug in the software that only manifested under specific, extreme neural fluctuations. Precisely the conditions being generated by Sophia's desperate brain attempts and the damaged feedback loop. This flaw was preventing the interface from properly learning the brain's true intent, effectively short-circuiting Sophia's efforts to send commands to her lower body and exacerbating the phantom block by creating a chaotic feedback loop of its own. This subtle software anomaly, a ghost in the machine that only Ethan, with his unique blend of engineering intuition and neurological insight, could perceive, was the true final barrier. He had to correct this on the fly, not through pre-programmed patches, but through raw intuitive understanding of complex neural pathways and advanced engineering, all while manually operating the delicate interface and battling his sister's insidious sabotage. The whispers about his past failures, his abandonment of his career, his perceived flight from responsibility echoed louder now in his mind, threatening to undermine his focus, to drown him in a sea of self-doubt. He was not just healing a body. He was fighting his own demons, a desperate high-stakes battle for Sophia's future, as her life and his redemption hung by a single agonizingly thin thread. The arena was set. The clock was ticking, and the symphony of desperation reached its horrifying crescendo. The sterile quiet of the ICU shattered into a cacophony of urgent alarms. Sophia's vitals, projected onto the large monitors, began to crash with horrifying speed. Her body went rigid, then spasmed violently, a terrifying echo of the exoskeleton's final destructive movements. The rhythmic beep of her heart monitor accelerated into a frantic, high-pitched shriek, then flatlined. A chilling, unbroken tone filled the room, a death knell. The experimental neurointerface prototype, now connected directly to Sophia's compromised neural pathways, emitted a shrill, piercing alarm of its own, signaling catastrophic system failure. Richard Hayes, on the other side of the glass partition, hammered on the reinforced surface, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated agony, his muffled shouts lost to the chaos. Medical staff began to scramble, their faces contorted with alarm, instinctively reaching for emergency protocols, their conventional training screaming that the patient was lost. It was the ultimate chaotic moment, a truly breathless moment, where everything seemed irrevocably lost. Sophia's eyes, wide and unseeing, stared blankly at the ceiling. The flat line on the monitor, cold and unwavering, was a stark, brutal pronouncement. Sophia was dying. From the corner of the room, a flicker of triumph, cold and calculating, crossed Eleanor Vance's face. He failed, just as I knew he would, just as he always does. With a swift, almost predatory movement, she lunged towards an emergency shutoff panel on the neurointerface console, intending to cut power to Ethan's experimental setup. She believed Ethan had irrevocably failed, and in her rigid, desperate worldview, conventional intervention, even if futile, was the only professional course of action. She would save Sophia even if it meant confirming Ethan's destructive recklessness and preserving her own conventional reputation. But Ethan, reacting with a preternatural speed born of years of high-stakes crisis management and an intuitive understanding of both human and machine, intercepted her. His hand shot out not towards the controls, but to Eleanor's wrist, gripping it in a vice-like hold. Their eyes met across the vibrating console. A silent, furious confrontation between siblings, a battle of wills playing out amidst the chaos of a dying patient. "Not now, Eleanor." Ethan growled, his voice low and dangerous eyes blazing with a cold fury that silenced his sister's insidious taunts. He twisted her arm, forcing her back against the wall, then without missing a single beat, redirected his attention to the console. His mind, a maelstrom of furious calculation, raced through dozens of complex algorithms and contingency plans per second. He barked a final complex series of commands to the assisting medical team, his voice cutting through the din with an authority that compelled immediate, unquestioning obedience. "Start the neurological stimulant drip. Precisely 0.5 milliliters. Now prep the defibrillator. Now." He didn't wait for confirmation. Simultaneously, with his right hand, his fingers flew across the neuro interface panel, overriding Eleanor's attempted shutoff with a practiced flick. His deep knowledge of the experimental flight control software's undocumented debug pathways, knowledge he himself had penned years ago, allowed him to initiate a rapid on-the-fly patch. He was correcting the subtle biofeedback algorithm glitch he had identified, the intermittent, almost undetectable desynchronization that had been poisoning Sophia's neural signals, the ghost in the machine that no one else could see or even comprehend. He pushed his injured rotator cuff, still a lingering ache from a past lab accident, past its screaming limits, forcing a minute but crucial calibration of the neuro interface's internal regulators. Then, with a delicate, almost mystical touch, Ethan placed his free hand on Sophia's temples, directly connecting with the neuro interface, which was a conduit between his genius and Sophia's struggling mind. He closed his eyes for a split second, channeling his own immense focus and intuitive understanding of neural pathways, effectively guiding her brain, forcing it to reinterpret the corrupted signals, compelling the phantom block to dissolve. It was a sequence of actions that no other human could replicate under such pressure, a testament to his unique blend of neurological insight, engineering genius, and profound empathy forged through years of specialized and often painful training. The flat line on the monitor flickered. A ragged, desperate gasp escaped Sophia's lips. Then, miraculously, against all odds, the monitor registered a faint, erratic heartbeat. It was weak, but it was there. A muscle in Sophia's left leg twitched almost imperceptibly beneath the sheet. Then another twitch, more forcefully this time. The shrill alarm from the neuro interface softened, replaced by a strained yet steady hum. Then, with an almost imperceptible, agonizing effort, Sophia's toes curled. Slowly, painfully, they uncurled. Then, with a surge of impossible will, Sophia lifted her hand, her fingers curling weakly into a fist. A wave of silent, stunned relief swept across the observation room. The medical team, their faces etched with disbelief, gasped as Sophia's vitals stabilized, her heart rate becoming stronger, more rhythmic. Their initial terror gave way to profound shock. Then, as the reality of her survival sank in, quickly followed by a wave of hysterical sobs, from a few nurses, spontaneous roaring applause erupted from beyond the glass partition. It was a primal cheer of gratitude and awe, a desperate release of pent-up fear, and a thunderous acknowledgement of an impossible miracle. Richard Hayes, his face initially ashen with terror, then a mask of profound shock, stared at Ethan. He saw not just a disheveled nurse in worn scrubs, but a legend reborn, a quiet genius whose brilliance had pulled his daughter back from the precipice of oblivion. His arrogant disdain, his corporate hauteur melted away like ice in a forge, replaced by profound awe and a dawning, humbling realization. Richard, the man who prided himself on absolute control, on the infallibility of his technology, had been utterly helpless. Ethan, the man he had dismissed, had commanded the very essence of life and death, bending science to his will, resurrecting hope from despair. Richard stumbled towards the intercom, his hand shaking uncontrollably as he seized the microphone. His voice, now trembling with raw, unvarnished emotion, boomed through the ICU, amplified by the hospital's restored internal systems. reaching every corner of the vast medical center and unknowingly countless media outlets. Ladies and gentlemen, by the grace of God, and the unparalleled genius of a man who prefers to remain unnamed, a true unsung hero, we have witnessed a miracle. My daughter, Sophia, she is safe. He then turned his eyes shining with unshed tears and looked directly at Ethan through the glass. His voice, though still amplified, dropped to a raw personal whisper, meant only for Ethan yet broadcast for the world to hear. "You did it, Mr. Thorne. You saved her. You saved my daughter." His words, broadcast live to the global media, were a complete public vindication for Ethan, a raw emotional declaration of his heroic actions to the world, witnessed by hundreds of terrified hospital staff executives, and unbeknownst to them, meticulously recorded by the now functioning hospital surveillance and the specialized neurointerface's own internal logs. Eleanor Vance, watching from the corner of the ICU, saw her final, most elaborate act of vengeance spectacularly backfire. The brief, desperate struggle with Ethan, her attempted sabotage of his console, and Richard's public, tearful declaration shattered her carefully constructed world. Her face twisted into a snarl of impotent rage, a grotesque mask of bitter, suffocating defeat. Her last vestiges of power, her carefully constructed reputation within the elite medical community, were utterly shattered, replaced by an agonizing, soul-crushing defeat. Every whisper she had spread about Ethan, every doubt she had sown, now rebounded on her 1,000-fold. The internet initially frozen in terror, and speculation erupted with the news of Sophia Hayes' miraculous recovery. Cell phone videos, shaky and tear-filled, of Richard Hayes' unprecedented public acknowledgement of an unknown nurse hero, flooded social media platforms. Ethan Thorne's name, the quiet single dad who walked into the ICU, was now on everyone's lips, a testament to the power of one man's courage and a genius that had refused to stay hidden. He had not only fixed the unfixable, not only brought life back from the brink, but had risen unexpectedly as the unforeseen architect of Sophia's and indeed his own redemption. The quiet rhythm of his life was gone, replaced by the thunderous applause of a world demanding to know its new hero. The raw, almost deafening applause that had erupted in the Hayes Medical Center, fueled by collective relief and awe, echoed for days across every major news outlet, reverberating through the digital ether. Ethan Thorne, the unassuming night nurse, had become an overnight legend, his name synonymous with the impossible. But amidst the global clamor, a quiet reckoning was taking place behind the scenes, a meticulous unraveling of betrayal, and a profound reevaluation of worth. Dr. Eleanor Vance, Ethan's estranged sister, witnessing her ultimate failure and the undeniable blinding triumph of her brother's genius, spiraled into a fit of impotent, seething rage. Her carefully constructed facade of professional composure shattered, revealing the bitter, twisted envy beneath. Her desperate final attempt to sabotage Ethan's intervention, the aborted lunge for the neuro-interfaces shut off her frantic whispers to undermine his focus, had been meticulously captured by the hospital's extensive surveillance system. More damningly, Richard Hayes' personal security team, under orders to monitor Ethan, had inadvertently recorded Eleanor's long-standing obstructive actions. The misplaced reports, the conflicting appointments, the subtle, insidious whispers of doubt to other staff. The evidence was irrefutable. Richard Hayes, now fully aware of Eleanor's treachery, his gratitude for Ethan's miracle eclipsing all other concerns, was utterly ruthless. The subtle biofeedback glitch that only Ethan could have fixed, and Eleanor's deliberate actions to prevent that fix, painted a damning picture of professional misconduct bordering on criminal negligence. Richard, though a man of immense wealth and power, rarely allowed personal feelings to cloud his business judgment. But this was different. This was his daughter, Sophia, whose life had hung by a thread, deliberately endangered by a doctor consumed by petty jealousy. Eleanor was immediately publicly stripped of her prestigious head neurosurgeon position. Hayes Robotics, with Richard's direct instruction, issued a scathing internal report that swiftly leaked to the media outlining Eleanor's egregious conduct. She faced a formal inquiry by the medical board for professional misconduct, endangerment of a patient, and a host of ethical violations. Her professional reputation, painstakingly built over decades on rigid adherence to protocol, and a carefully cultivated image of unassailable expertise, was utterly destroyed in a matter of days. She lost everything: her prestigious job at one of the world's leading medical institutions, her standing in the global medical community, Her research grants her access to cutting-edge technology, and her last vestiges of pride. It was a just and comprehensive downfall, leaving her isolated, disgraced, and utterly powerless, her insidious envy finally costing her everything she had so desperately sought to maintain. Richard Hayes, using his vast influence, ensured she was blacklisted from any respectable medical institution, her betrayal unforgivable in his eyes. Her reign as a medical titan had ended, replaced by the ignominy of public and professional ruin. Richard Hayes, deeply humbled and profoundly impressed by Ethan's quiet genius and unwavering resolve, didn't just offer Ethan a reward. He offered him a partnership that would redefine his company and transform Ethan's life in ways he could never have imagined. Richard himself had undergone a profound metamorphosis. The crushing experience of Sophia's paralysis, the terrifying brush with losing her, and the humbling realization of his own powerlessness had stripped away his arrogance, revealing a more vulnerable, genuinely compassionate man beneath the hardened CEO facade. He saw in Ethan not just a brilliant mind, but a man of immense integrity and empathy, qualities he now valued above all others. He proposed a new cutting-edge division within Hayes Robotics dedicated entirely to neuroprosthetics, advanced rehabilitation, and personalized AI-driven medical solutions. This new venture, to be named Thorne Hayes Neuro Innovations, would be led by Ethan with complete autonomy and limitless resources. This wasn't just a job. It was a platform for Ethan's suppressed brilliance, a chance to fully explore his most ambitious ideas, to bring his revolutionary concepts to life, without the financial constraints or bureaucratic red tape that had once stifled him. It came with state-of-the-art research and development facilities, a dedicated team, including some of Sophia's physical therapists who had witnessed Ethan's miracle firsthand, along with brilliant young engineers eager to work under a true visionary and the complete authority to implement his revolutionary vision. This new role provided him with not just immense financial stability, but also profound intellectual fulfillment, a respected place in the world, and the unparalleled opportunity to truly impact millions of lives on a global scale. Richard Hayes, stripped of his former arrogance, revealed a more vulnerable, compassionate side, genuinely invested in Ethan's well-being and the future of his newfound family. A quiet, deep respect bordering on genuine friendship developed between the two men, forged in the crucible of shared danger and mutual admiration. Elias, seeing Ethan's quiet dedication and the profound impact of his work, also quietly offered to fully fund Lily's education from primary school. Through her advanced degrees, a gesture of profound gratitude that brought tears to Ethan's eyes. Weeks later, the frantic energy of the ICU had been replaced by the quiet, purposeful hum of the newly established R&D lab for Thorne Hayes Neuro Innovations. It was a bright, spacious facility filled with gleaming prototypes, buzzing diagnostic equipment, and an array of sophisticated neural interfaces, custom-built to Ethan's precise specifications. In this new sanctuary of innovation, Ethan and Richard shared a quiet moment, a rare pause amidst the whirlwind of new beginnings. Sophia, undergoing daily physical therapy in an adjacent, sun-drenched room, was making astonishing, almost miraculous progress, her movements becoming more fluid, more purposeful with each passing day. They reflected on the absurdity of their first meeting, the desperate plea, Richard's arrogant dismissal, Eleanor's venomous interference, and the quiet resilience that had carried Ethan through. Richard admitted his profound misjudgment, his blindness to true talent that existed outside his corporate hierarchy. "I thought I knew everything about innovation, about what medical breakthroughs looked like." He confessed, his voice tinged with a genuine humility that would have been unthinkable just weeks prior. "I thought money and conventional expertise were the only keys. But you showed me, Ethan, how little I truly understood about genuine ingenuity, about courage that doesn't need a medical degree or a fancy title to shine. You saw beyond the conventional, beyond the impossible." He gestured vaguely to the bustling lab. This is beyond anything my own teams could have conceived." Ethan in turn acknowledged how Richard's desperate public plea, coupled with Sophia's crushing despair, had inadvertently forced him to confront his own buried potential, pulling him out of his self-imposed exile. He shared fragments of his past, revealing the full, agonizing story of why he had retreated from the world of high-stakes neuroprosthetics. He spoke of the traumatic incident involving a complex design flaw in an earlier prototype neural implant, a subtle flaw he had engineered that, while not catastrophic, had led to unforeseen debilitating side effects for a patient. "I caused suffering, Richard," Ethan admitted quietly, his gaze distant. "Even though I was cleared of direct fault, the knowledge that my work, my ideas caused pain, it broke me. I lost faith in my ability to do good, to make a difference without causing harm." The ensuing self-blame, despite his being cleared of direct fault, had led to profound burnout, a gnawing guilt, and a desperate desire to escape the pressure to simply care for others in a tangible, simple way. This shared vulnerability deepened their connection, forging a bond far stronger than any business partnership. It was a friendship built on mutual respect, understanding, and a shared commitment to a future where technology served humanity in its most profound and compassionate forms. Ethan still sketched intricate neural network designs in his worn notebook, but now with a lightness and joy, his mind free to create beauty and purpose without the crushing pressure of past failure. The quiet single dad had found his voice and his true calling once more, 5 years later. The quiet single dad who walked into the ICU, once a shadow haunted by past failures, was now a celebrated figure, a name whispered with reverence in the halls of innovation and hope. Ethan Thorne had not merely rebuilt his life, he had revolutionized an entire field. He was now a world-renowned pioneer in neuroprosthetics, heading Hayes Robotics' groundbreaking Thorne Hayes Neuro Innovations division. His name was synonymous not just with restoring mobility, but with igniting a boundless hope for millions who had once been told their limitations were absolute. He and Richard Hayes were no longer just business partners. Their bond had deepened into a profound friendship, forged in the crucible of shared danger, mutual admiration, and the miracle they had witnessed together. Ethan's personal life had found a serene, beautiful rhythm. He now lived in a beautiful, sprawling home, nestled in a quiet green suburb, meticulously designed by a specialized architect, with both stunning form and seamless function in mind. It was a place of abundant light, open spaces, and quiet joy for him and Lily, a sanctuary that reflected the peace he had finally found. Sophia Hayes, now 29, walked with a fluid, confident grace that defied the catastrophic injury she had sustained. Her recovery was nothing short of miraculous, a testament to Ethan's genius and her own unyielding spirit. She wasn't just mobile, she was running marathons on specialized tracks, her powerful strides an inspiration to millions. She had not only fully recovered her mobility, but had embraced her second chance with fierce purpose, becoming a passionate, eloquent advocate for accessible technology and neurorehabilitation. Working closely with Ethan's division, she used her own extraordinary story to inspire countless others, demonstrating his groundbreaking prosthetics and interfaces with a radiant joy that captivated audiences globally. Lily, now 15, was a brilliant, empathetic young woman blossoming into her own unique potential. She excelled in her studies, particularly in bioengineering and robotics, mirroring her father's brilliance, but with her own unique artistic flair and an innate curiosity that seemed to know no bounds. Her sketchbooks, once filled with superhero drawings, now overflowed with intricate designs for future prosthetics and elegant functional assistive devices, her youthful optimism infusing a refreshing perspective into Ethan's more seasoned approaches. Richard Hayes, having shed the last vestiges of his past arrogance, had become a true patron of human potential, a philanthropist committed to ethical innovation. He ensured Ethan had complete autonomy and limitless resources for his division, trusting his judgment implicitly, a far cry from the dismissive CEO Ethan had first encountered. Never forgetting his own struggles or the profound isolation he had once felt, Ethan had poured his heart into giving back. He established a thriving nonprofit foundation, largely funded by Richard Hayes and bolstered by global donations from corporations and private individuals, called the Neural Pathways Initiative. Its mission was simple, yet profound, to provide free or low-cost neurorehabilitation technology and mentorship for individuals with spinal cord injuries and complex neurological conditions, particularly focusing on those from underserved communities who would otherwise have no access to such life-changing care. He personally mentored young patients, guiding them through their rehabilitation journeys, sharing not just technical solutions or revolutionary devices, but more importantly, imparting invaluable lessons in resilience, integrity, and the quiet, profound power of reclaiming one's life. The faded neural network tattoo on his wrist, once a hidden mark of a buried past, was now the official logo of his initiative, a beacon of hope for those seeking guidance and opportunity, a symbol of breakthroughs and second chances. He often spoke at prestigious medical conferences, community centers, and rehabilitation clinics around the world, sharing his extraordinary story, emphasizing that true healing often required looking beyond conventional wisdom, embracing the unconventional, and that a second chance at life, a full, vibrant, meaningful life, was always possible no matter how bleak the prognosis. His message resonated deeply, inspiring a new generation of scientists, engineers, and healthcare professionals. The story culminates on a warm, late-afternoon sunlight streaming through the immense glass facade of the newly inaugurated Sophia Hayes Rehabilitation Center. This state-of-the-art facility, sprawling and meticulously designed, was entirely funded by the Thorne Hayes Neuro Innovations Division and conceptualized by Ethan himself, embodying his vision of holistic rehabilitation. It now offered advanced personalized neurorehabilitation using Ethan's groundbreaking technology, accessible to all irrespective of their financial status. Ethan, Lily, and Sophia Hayes stood together in the gleaming atrium. Sophia, now a radiant symbol of restored potential, was demonstrating a new, fully integrated neuro interface that allowed a patient with even severe paralysis to control a complex robotic arm with the subtlest of thoughts, moving with remarkable dexterity. As she reached out to grasp a delicate dew-kissed white rose from a nearby vase, her movements were fluid, graceful, a testament to the seamless integration of mind and machine. Lily, standing tall beside her father, held a sketchbook filled with intricate designs for future prosthetics, sleek, almost artistic limbs that blended seamlessly with the human form. Her face beamed with pride, a reflection of the profound impact her father had made. As Sophia's hand, guided by thought, gently touched the velvety petals of the rose, a subtle rhythmic hum emanated from the technology, a soft, ethereal melody that seemed to fill the expansive atrium. It was the symphony of movement, the harmonious culmination of years of dedicated research, compassionate care, and unwavering belief in the impossible. Ethan put a gentle, loving arm around Lily's shoulders, then exchanged a look of profound respect with Sophia, whose eyes held a depth of gratitude that transcended words. A warm, knowing smile passed between Ethan and Richard Hayes, who stood nearby witnessing the extraordinary fruits of their improbable partnership. The quiet, single dad who had walked into the ICU, once broken and invisible, had become the architect of the human spirit, building a legacy not just of unprecedented technological innovation, but of boundless hope, compassion, and restored dignity. He had left an indelible mark on the world, one restored step, one retrieved object, one vibrant life at a time. The world was still full of challenges, full of suffering. But for Ethan and his family, the family he chose, the family he built, and the countless lives he touched, the future was an open horizon full of infinite promise, built on unshakable foundations of resilience, ingenuity, and boundless transformative love. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path, even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming narratives that delve into the profound human spirit and the power of unseen heroes. Thank you for joining our journey.